Hello and aloha. This is Thomas Ellenberg coming to you from Waikiki, Honolulu, Hawaii. It is February 2008, and this is kind of like an open letter to Bill Maher, who is one of the great, still, one of the great free thinkers who are still speaking out courageously in the United States, holding up the torch of freedom to the world and speaking what he believes. And I have an answer for him as to why in the world haven't Americans stood up. And even though most of us are now aware that we have been lied to and we have been manipulated and we have been brainwashed and we have been programmed and we have been seduced, we have been ignored, and we have been invisibilized by our so-called leaders, why haven't we risen up and kicked out the so-called leaders and put in some people who really represent us and represent life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Well, I have an answer, and the answer is we have become cultural Uncle Toms. Caesar put it well when he said, give them bread and circuses and they will not revolt. They won't stand up and they won't question the dominant paradigm. I've been a teacher all of my life in the public school system, and Bill, let me tell you, the one aspect of the conversation that is missing in all of this as to why haven't we risen up as true Americans who really believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and equality, and freedom of speech, and freedom of expression, and honesty, and ethics. Why haven't we just stood up and thrown them out? All of them. We know that the majority of them have been bought and sold by the great moneyed interests, the banksters, and the huge corporations. So why haven't we done anything? Well, I think I have a piece of the puzzle. One of the aspects of the problem that is not even being discussed, and I would like to suggest that you have me on your program so we can at least open up the cultural conversation as to how Americans became so somnambulistic, so hypnotized, so much like the invasion of the body snatchers or those sleeping pods in the Matrix. I, however, as a public school teacher all of my life, I woke up in the middle of the system. I taught in the Peace Corps, in the Teacher Corps, and taught all of my life in San Francisco. Thank God I was in a liberal place where I was allowed some free thinking by some forward-looking administrators and fellow teachers and some very supportive parents. I discovered something to my chagrin during the 70s and early 80s, right after the assassinations of Mayor Moscone, Milk, the Jonestown massacres, the Zodiac killings, and just the rampage of violence that had taken away all of our most visionary leaders like JFK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Gandhi, Sadat, Begin, you name them. If they were visionary, ethical, and idealistic and really stood for life, liberty, and the pursuit of individual happiness in a world gone mad, they were wiped out. And yet, these ignorant leaders go on and on and on mouthing their platitudes, and we do nothing. Well, I realized as a public school teacher something that was happening which was dumbing down and silencing our culture, and it was the reign of fear and terror in the public school system in the name of discipline. I saw it quite clearly. I saw how as the classrooms became more and more overcrowded, even though we teachers, many of us were really dedicated and really loved our kids and really liked the idea of education, how we were forced, just because we were so overwhelmed just by numbers and crowded classrooms, that we were forced to use fear tactics to control our students. Actually, if you remember your own public school history, you will remember when you entered school, the fear that mingled in with the excitement as the new adventure began, and how you quickly learned that you had to be a people pleaser and a teacher pleaser and a peer pleaser if you were going to survive and make it. You had to be, in other words, a good little Uncle Tom. This is the name of my book that I wrote about my discoveries that I would really like to talk about on the media, called Uncle Tom's Classroom: How One Public School Teacher Awakened His Students to the Cosmic Super Self Within. And in the back, I pointedly say, it is time to throw off your chains and set yourself free, to remember the quantum field master you were created to be. Because even in quantum physics, our greatest scientists right now and visionaries are beginning to understand that we each have a role in the society, in the culture in which we live, a creative role. And what we input into our culture and into our dominant paradigm will become our society, will become our culture. So what happens in the public school system is we train children, number one, to be afraid of authority, to number two, turn over their will to authority, to not choose to follow their bliss, as Joseph Campbell said, is the secret of happiness and developing one's fullest potential, but to turn over their focus and their attention to whatever it was that the state and local curriculums demanded that they learn. Europe is much more progressive in the sense that they realize that it only takes a few years to learn the basic skills, and after that, it's really important to allow a student to choose their own curriculum and to develop their natural genius, their capacity for genius, which is what the idea classically education is all about, drawing forth the natural born genius from within each child. And that's where the idea of the cosmic super self comes in, because I discovered, along with my students in the middle schools that I taught in San Francisco, that when you free a child to follow their curricular bliss, that they do begin to live a much more empowered, self-directed, free-thinking, and joyous life, which we call the life of the cosmic super self, where they began to realize that we so-called humans are actually citizens of the cosmos. We are citizens of our galaxy. We are citizens of a universe. And even though I know, Bill, you've joked about you don't see the intelligent design behind things like disease and suffering and things like that, there are many philosophers right now, mystics, New Age thinkers, and even quantum physicists that are beginning to connect the dots and beginning to connect what goes on in here in our minds with what we manifest in reality, and discovering that those people who think positive actually do end up having a much more positive experience. So anyway, what I did was I woke up like Neo in the Matrix. I discovered that we were using fear to terrorize our children into somnambulistic, lemming-like, zombied out behavior. And then I began to open up the doors and windows of my classroom. I put up a sign that said free speech allowed, and we opened up free discourse. I allowed children to bring in all kinds of books to read and ideas to talk about. And it was a wonderful experience. They stopped being Uncle Toms and they became fully empowered, self-actualized cosmic super selves who have now gone on to become actors, Olympians, stem cell researchers, and really manifested and actualized what was within them. So anyway, what we need to do to begin to reform our country and wake it up out of its brainwashed, programmed lethargy is to begin to look at why we became lethargic as a society and went home and just gave up our freedoms so easily. We were educated in the school system to become Uncle Toms. It became so natural after 12 years that we haven't even looked at it. And so that's what I'm asking right now, that we open up the conversation as to why we have become a nation of Uncle Toms when we really are cosmic super selves. Aloha.